So today's video, I'm gonna get into why I stopped using stuff like this and started building stuff like this. So for anybody that's been under a rock, this is pretty much a 3-axis gimbal for your mirrorless camera. A lot of videographers use these to stabilize your camera movement. And I've had experience with this type of equipment before. I've even used it as a main tool when I first started doing music videos. But as my style of filmmaking has evolved over the years since I first started, a tool like this is beginning to kind of hinder my workflow when I go on sets. We're going to get into that, and we're going to get into a few reasons why I think building something like this may be beneficial to you depending on what type of shooter you are. So the first main reason for me why I stopped using gimbals, I touched on it a little bit in the beginning, is more so of a workflow perspective. The main part of that being balancing. So using a gimbal like this on your mirrorless camera does require you to balance it and calibrate it before you can start shooting with it. And if you're not someone who's experienced with a piece of equipment like this, and I've even seen this happen to experienced people, having to balance and calibrate something like this when you get on set adds about another 20 to 30 minutes of preparation time when you get on set. And what you'll come to find out the more that you film is that time is your biggest asset. Which brings me to another problem I have with the workflow of this is lens swapping. You know, it's obvious the more that you shoot, you're not going to use the same lens for literally every shoot. So having to swap lenses out is going to require you to rebalance and in some cases recalibrate the gimbal anytime that you're trying to swap a lens and get a different angle for a shot. I think the second biggest reason that I stopped using gimbals, and this is going to be kind of controversial, but it's more so the type of movement that you get from using a gimbal with your mirrorless camera. I know the word cinematic is taboo in the film world, but when I think about what makes a shot or scene or frame cinematic, I think about what's the natural aspect of that shot. That's just my personal opinion. And when I look at gimbal movements, it's just personal preference. I don't see a natural movement with the camera when I look at a gimbal. I know it's stable and you don't see a lot of the micro jitters with handheld movement. But when I think about a frame, I think about what I would see with the natural eye. And if you're walking down the street or you're walking up to a subject or you're walking up to someone, is what you see with your own two eyes going to be stabilized, or is there going to be a little bit of movement there? Another part of this reason is that when using gimbals and you're trying to make certain types of turns and camera movements, and you'll see this a lot with people who don't calibrate their gimbals right, is there's certain little micro jerks that as a filmmaker, when I see it, I can tell that a gimbal's being used. In my personal preference, if I can tell that you're using a gimbal, I just don't like it. And when I see those micro jerks, I have to go back and recalibrate the gimbal because I can't have that in my shot, which goes back to my first reason, which is a time and workflow perspective. And then the biggest part is this, right? I shoot a lot of weddings and events and things of that nature. And when you use a piece of equipment like this, you're really relying on the motors of the gimbal to run stable during all of your most important shots. And me personally, I just don't feel comfortable leaving the quality of my shot in the hands of a piece of machinery that could ultimately malfunction at any time. I think the third biggest reason that I stopped using gimbals and lean more towards cinema rigs is sort of the ergonomics perspective. So when you have a gimbal like this, and some of them are bigger than others, using it, you either hold it like this or you have an extender and you're holding it with two hands. But you essentially only have 2 points of contact with this gimbal. Whereas compared to a rig, you've got one hand here, then you pull it against your chest, which gives you 3 points of contact. And then another good thing about building a rig like this is it adds a lot of weight to your camera, which if you're a handheld shooter and you're wanting stable footage, the weight is going to do that for you. Letting gravity do the work, as long as your rig is properly balanced and built right, can give you some of the best stable handheld footage that you can ask for. What's going on, guys? Future Me here. Something I wanted to talk about that I didn't get to really get into while I was making this video is that another good thing about building a cinema rig is that it allows you to do a lot more assist features and a lot more things that help you on set. Like putting a matte box on the front of your rig helps with a lot of the lens flares. Having a monitor on your setup gives you a good way to monitor your image instead of relying on the flip out screen or LCD screen that your camera comes with. And some cameras that people buy don't even have a flip out screen on it. So building a cinema rig like this could be very, very good to monitor your footage and get focus assist features, especially if you're someone who's a handheld cinema shooter or manual shooter. You like to do manual focus, things of that nature. So that's something else I wanted to get into but didn't really talk about while I was in here. Now let's get back to the video. And I know this next part is sort of superficial and is not really as important as some of the other things that I talked about, but the ergonomics of having something like this just makes you look 10 times more professional. I can't tell you how many times I've pulled up onto set into shoots with a camera like this built out and get 1,000 compliments on how good my gear looks, or just as many questions on what gear I actually have. And the best thing about cinema rigs is that you can essentially do something like this to virtually any camera you have. Like right now, this is just a GH4 cinema rigged out, and this is a 10-year-old camera, but look how professional this looks, how you would walk up on set with something like this. I have a Sony FX30 that I've rigged out similarly, but I'm shooting with that, so you can't really see it in this shot, but I'll throw some B-roll scenes of that in the footage. Ultimately, those are a few of my reasons why I stopped personally using gimbals in my workflow. This isn't a video to deter people from using gimbals. If it's something that is ultimately needed in your workflow, then I would definitely do the research on it and just grab the right one that works for you. Ultimately, a piece of gear like this is a tool, just like a rig like this is a tool. Either one of these tools, when used right, can get the job done as long as you take time. Be strategic, thoughtful, and deliberate in your shots before you press record. And I guarantee you'll come out with an image that you'll love, your clients will love, and it'll ultimately help you elevate your filmmaking journey. That's enough of me talking, guys. I appreciate everybody that made it this far in the video. If you found anything helpful, I appreciate it if you drop a like, comment, and subscribe in this video. It really helps me put out more content for you guys like this. It's been another one from your boy DaVinci HD, reminding you the only reason that piece of content you want isn't out is because you haven't pressed record. See you guys on set. Peace out.